This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Patrik Laine officially announced a trade request for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and now it looks like this offseason we are going to see a Laine deal. And today we're going to go through 7 different NHL teams that I think make the most sense for Laine, teams that could bring him on, as well as give Columbus what they truly want. So, which NHL teams would actually be in on Patrik Laine? Which teams make the most sense to bring him on? And what are my mock trades for Laine this offseason? Well, make sure you watch till the end for all of the trade talk. And of course, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you're new for more hockey content just like this. So much coming up this offseason that, of course, you guys won't want to miss. Now, quite really out of nowhere, yesterday we saw Pure LeBron on Insider Trading talking about the Patrik Laine situation and how with him in the NHLPA assistance program, he has wanted a fresh start out of Columbus and for next season wants to be on a different team. The important part here is not only did LeBron mention that Laine wants a fresh start, but he also mentions that both sides are working on a trade. So it's not just Laine, Columbus also wants a fresh start here. And honestly, that makes a ton of sense because Patrik Laine's time in Columbus has been pretty uneventful and unsuccessful. I mean, he's had a couple of pretty solid individual seasons here and there, but nothing all too fantastic, and Columbus hasn't really had much success with him either. Here's the thing, I think a lot of people have given up on Laine, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of him either, I still think there's a ton of offense you can unlock there. Again, in the time that Laine's been with Columbus, they've been a pretty garbage team, especially in the center position. He really hasn't had anybody else besides like Boone Jenner up until this year. Just not a lot to work off of, and I think on a true contender with a center that can feed him in the right situations, he could still be a dangerous threat. And even though I don't think he'll ever be this defensive beast, I still think Laine can be very valuable, especially on the power play and in offensive situations, which is where you want him to be anyways. And if he is on a true contender, I think he will turn the page and be extremely valuable. But also, Laine's value is at rock bottom right now. With the injury history, with the inconsistencies in Columbus, I don't think the Blue Jackets are going to get the haul they probably want to. Even though Laine, I don't think will get spectacular value, for the Blue Jackets, there still are a lot of options. Now we're going to get to the Patrik Laine mock trades and seeing what the value could be for him on the open market and what teams could be in on him. But first, I want to talk about today's sponsor and BetUS. With the NBA Finals, with the, of course, Stanley Cup Final underway, now is the best time to get started with BetUS. And for Game 3 between the Oilers and Panthers, this one I'm going to ride high for the Oilers. Of course, not just the Edmonton crowd effect, which I think will be massive for the Oilers, but also Florida arriving late to Edmonton just last night. I think that jet lag might be an issue for Florida. Right now on the money line, there's minus 140 for the Oilers. We're going to go for that. And also I'm going to go over 5.5 on the total for goals in the game. We're going to put $5 down to win 12. We'll see what happens, but this one is going to be a rowdy one. Game 3 is going to be nuts, and BetUS, of course, is the best way to make it even more fun and even more interesting. Just go in the description to sign up there. And of course, every time you guys do helps the channel a ton. And thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get started with the Patrik Laine mock trades. And we're going to start out with a team that honestly is the most likely to end up acquiring Laine in the end. And pretty obviously, that is the Carolina Hurricanes. Now for me, I think this is the perfect opportunity for Carolina and Columbus to get rid of the younger players that might be a little bit disgruntled. And I think you have an idea of who I might mention going back to Columbus. But for the actual mock trade itself, I see Patrik Laine and Adam Boqvist on top of a 3rd rounder and 5th rounder from Columbus this year. In exchange to Columbus, they will get Marty Necas. Now, to me personally, this deal makes a ton of sense. We've already heard a lot about how Columbus is interested in Necas. They've been trying to go after him, trying to make a deal happen. I mean, Don Waddell, of course, now in Columbus has an instant connection there. And I feel like for Carolina, this is the exact type of trade that could really mix up a lot of different things. As their defense might be kind of reshaped a little bit, Adam Boqvist could be a really interesting addition offensively for them. And of course, you get Patrik Laine, who is the exact type of sniper they always need more of. To me with Carolina, even though on paper it could be a really good addition, there is quite a bit of risk there. And I think getting Boqvist, getting a couple picks on top is crucial. And for Columbus, you can make the case that they get a player upgrade, getting a much better play driver in Necas, and that's what they could use. And considering what Don Waddell has already said he's wanted to add this offseason for Columbus, wanting to get some more star power, wanting to add more to the offense, Marty Necas is exactly the type of player that Columbus could really desire, and I think they'll really want to get him in the end, enough to trade Laine, Boqvist, and picks back. But let's keep going and go on to the second team that I think could be really fascinating in Patrik Laine's case, and that is the Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously, cap is a major thing here, having $32 million to work with this offseason, but I also think fit-wise it could be fascinating. But for the trade itself, I see, of course, Chicago getting Patrik Laine's services. In exchange for Columbus, they'll get lefty Ethan Del Mastro. This, to me, is the big trade piece that Columbus is getting back. 6'4", 21-year-old D, who has transitioned pretty well onto the AHL level. I think they'll want to shore up that left side, though, defensively, and this depends on what the Blue Jackets are looking for in the draft. If they go for Anton Zelayev, then obviously this deal wouldn't happen, but I think if they're going to go for a Kane Lindstrom or a Demidov, perhaps, I think Del Mastro could be a really interesting add to that prospect pool. And for the forward edition, I see it being Lucas Reichel, who just in Chicago hasn't really worked very well, but I still think there's a lot of skill, a lot of individual talent to unlock there, and I still think he could be a top 6 piece someday. Obviously, he's not had a good start in Chicago, but I think he turns that around. And on top of that, I also see Columbus getting a 2025 first rounder, which is the Leafs pick that the Blackhawks got from the Jake McCabe deal, and that 2025 fourth rounder, which will be Chicago's. Now, sure, is this a lot to give up here, Chicago? Absolutely, but I also feel like if they are going to prioritize D in this draft, go for an Artem Levshunov, perhaps go for maybe another D with the second pick in their first round, then to me, I think this would be a pretty interesting deal, especially considering the playmakers they already have coming up, like Oliver Moore, like Frank Nazar, who will be in the lineup next year. To me, you're going to have a lot of centers coming up on the playmaking side who needs someone to pass the puck to, and Laine will be in the perfect position there to kind of be the complementary scorer, not somebody that is the true play driver, but is somebody that finishes the plays. And I think in Chicago's case, that could be a really interesting fit. For Columbus, you get a potential top 4 D, a potential top 6 wing, and a first and a fourth on top of that. This one will be pretty interesting to see. Now we keep going, and next up onto the third team that I think could trade for Laine, we got the Preds, who I think would be a great fit. You, of course, have Laine going to the Preds, but I also think Jake Bean would be a part of the deal going to Nashville as well. Kind of like Carolina, I think Nashville's going to be kind of trying to reshape this defense and trying to make it a lot different than it had been. Jake Bean will be a part of that and played a full season this last year. I thought was okay, pretty solid, but I think still has some room to grow there, and in Nashville could be pretty interesting. On the side, though, going to Columbus, though, I see in exchange Philip Tomasino, Zachary Leroux, and Jeremy Lauzon as the players going back, and a 2025 first rounder, which would be the Preds, though this one will be lottery protected. To me, though, this all depends on how much Columbus actually values those prospects. Zachary Leroux is somebody, though, that with this AHL campaign and the AHL playoffs was brilliant and has a lot of snarl that Columbus could really use. You also got Tomasino, who's somebody that's just bursting at the seams, trying to become an NHLer. Jeremy Lauzon, of course, is a hard-hitting D who's been one of the bigger hitter leaders over the past couple of years. And that first-round pick could be pretty valuable, especially if Nashville is in that middle range again. If they make the playoffs just barely, and it's a 17th, 18th overall pick, that's not a bad pick to have your Columbus, and they could flip that for something else, perhaps. But I feel like for Nashville, they want to get a little more top-end scoring, which is something I think they could use. I mean, Nashville's kind of in a weird spot right now transitionally, but I think Laine is still young enough where he kind of fits into that future. I don't think they give up any insane prospects or anything like that, but I think it's good enough for Columbus and brings some great depth throughout the lineup. I mean, I think Tomasino will still likely be a middle sixer. Zachary Leroux could maybe fit into the top 6 one day. We'll see. But I feel like for Columbus, this is one of those trades that might be a little bit disappointing at the first impression, but could still provide a lot for them in the future. Now we keep going and on to the fourth mock trade, and the fourth team that I think will be on Laine. This is one that I don't really see many people talking about, and that's the Seattle Kraken. I think Seattle could be a fascinating fit for Laine, especially considering the players they already have and what they could need. That top-end scoring punch, Laine will be fascinating there. Now, unlike some of the other deals, this is just Patrik Laine going to Seattle, but I think kind of like the Natchez deal, we could see a couple of wingers getting exchanged here. For Seattle, they'll end up getting Patrik Laine, but in exchange for Columbus, I think they'll end up getting Andre Burakovsky, and on top of that, the prospects being Edward Chalet, former 20th overall pick, and Caden Price. On top of that, I think Seattle will throw in the 2024 third-round pick to make this deal happen. Now, I like this deal a lot for both teams. For Seattle, they get some extra scoring punch, and I think alongside Matty Beniers, those two could be pretty fascinating. But for Columbus, they get Andre Burakovsky, who, when healthy, can still be a pretty solid middle 6 player. That is the question, though. He's somebody that hasn't really played too consistently. He's played 49 games in back-to-back seasons for Seattle, and is somebody that I think just needs a fresh start, honestly. But I think the prospects are pretty interesting here. Edward Chalet probably has his lowest value at this point. He's somebody that at 20th overall was a little bit of a reach already, and then this last year in the OHL just wasn't really impressive for him. You got also Caden Price on top of that, who I think is a pretty underrated defensive prospect, 84th overall by the Kraken back in 2023. He's somebody that had a great this last year in the WHL. He's somebody, though, that could also factor into the defense, maybe on a bottom pair someday for Columbus. It's not an overwhelming package, but I think considering the NHL player already going back in Burakovsky, that could be a pretty enticing ad. And the prospects here, if Columbus especially likes Edward Chalet, that to me could be a pretty big piece. He's not somebody I'm personally very high on, but it doesn't matter. It only matters what Columbus thinks here. Now we keep going, and for my next mock trade, it'll feature the LA Kings, and no, not Pierre-Luc Dubois. Even though it would be hilarious, it's not gonna happen. But this LA deal is relatively simple. It kind of depends on how much Columbus wants to add to the roster now, how impatient Don Waddell might be to improve the roster, because I think LA has a couple of NHLers that Columbus might want to go after. I think Trevor Moore makes a lot of sense here. He's somebody that, even though he had a great regular season, is somebody that just hasn't really performed for them in the playoffs the last couple of seasons, and someone that LA might be a little bit frustrated with in that end. He's somebody, though, I think Columbus could really benefit from having the speed, having the intensity he brings. I also think Arthur Kaliyev will be a slam dunk. He's somebody that I think is absolutely going to get traded one way or another. He will not be an LA King next year. But I think in Columbus, if they're able to unlock the talent there, you still could get a pretty good middle six player. That's what I believe. And on top of that, I see the 21st overall pick by the Kings in this year's draft also going in exchange. So Laine for more, Kaliyev and a first rounder completes the deal. For me, for LA, they're kind of in a weird spot. Maybe they want to go for a bigger play driver, perhaps, if they're going to trade all these assets. But Laine, of course, is a scorer. We know LA needs offense. They need to find some more top-end talent. If Laine is able to unlock his true potential, that could be exactly what they need. But I do think you lose some speed in this deal, especially losing more. So maybe that's something that LA doesn't want to have happen. But I also think they need to make some big changes. They need to actually change the bulk of this roster, because it really hasn't been working these past couple of seasons. Especially if they want to beat Edmonton, they got to make some changes, and this would certainly be one. But now on to the 6th mock trade for Patrik Laine. Let's go on to the New Jersey Devils. Now, New Jersey will be straight up wild, but I just got to say, a top 2 left wing core of Meier and Laine on top of the center group already. I'm just saying there could be some interest there. Now, New Jersey will still be going after defense. I don't think this is the trade really to solve that. I mean, obviously, Laine is not the best defensive player in the world, but I think goal-scoring-wise, he could provide a lot for them. For Columbus, they'll end up giving Laine and Jake Bean to New Jersey. In exchange, the Blue Jackets will take on the Andre Palat contract, which I think is something that the New Jersey Devils would really want to get rid of in this deal. Also, Alexander Holtz, who is somebody that New Jersey just doesn't have a lot of faith in at this point, but we already saw how Columbus was able to get a lot of Alex Nylander at the end of this last year. Maybe they're able to do the same with Holtz. I also think defenseman Kevin Ball would be back in the deal, more of a physical defenseman. I think Columbus would really want him in this trade. And on top of that, I think the 10th overall pick from this draft would be a part of things. Now, here's the thing. Would that 10th overall pick be there if it weren't for the Palat contract? I'm not so sure, but I think getting rid of that deal, also bringing in Laine and Bean, and also not really giving up a top prospect in this deal makes New Jersey have to give up that pick. Maybe Columbus would want to get a Seamus Casey, perhaps, or something like that if it weren't for that 10th overall, but I think because that New Jersey will just end up getting rid of it. I mean, we already know they want to get rid of that 10th overall pick. This could be the situation where they do so. This deal will be absolutely wild, and obviously, like a lot of these other trades, it just depends on what Columbus's game plan is. If they are trying to go for the best pick possible, to me, I think New Jersey is the best place to go to. I think it's the most likely pick to be traded. We already know New Jersey wants to deal it in a trade. Maybe this is the trade to make it happen. We'll have to wait and see. If they want to go for more NHL-ready prospects, this deal doesn't quite have that unless you count Alexander Holtz in the deal. But I feel like for Columbus, if they want to go for more picks, this would be the best route. Now we go on to the 7th and final mock trade of the bunch, and this one is by far the craziest, the weirdest, whatever you want to call it, but this one, it could be fascinating. Let's get into it. Now, obviously, going to Calgary would be Patrik Laine, but on top of that would be Elvis Merzlikins. I think we'll see a potential goalie swap here between Columbus and Calgary. Merzlikins coming in, I think we'll end up seeing Vladar also traded in a separate deal this offseason, but of course, that cap it, I think would be something where it maybe gives Calgary more value in the end. In exchange, though, we'll see Columbus get Jacob Markstrom from William Stromgren as the prospect going back, and a 2024 second rounder, which will be Calgary's. This to me will be an absolute wild deal to see happen. I mean, Patrik Laine will be so interesting in Calgary if they're trying to rejuvenate that roster, trying to already make it a lot better. This could be a pretty interesting trade to do so. You also get MY Laine, so I think in a different situation could be a lot better. And even though he hasn't performed up to expectations really the past 3 years or so, he's somebody that still has a lot of talent in him. But for Columbus, they get an established goaltender in Jacob Markstrom who will really improve the overall team there. And you get Stromgren, who has really performed well in the AHL last season, getting 27 points in 68 games after struggling in Sweden. He's somebody that's already starting to develop in the North American game and could be somebody on the left wing side that could maybe start to be a replacement of sorts. And you get a second round pick on top of things. But I think for Columbus, the main draw is getting a great goaltender, which Jacob Markstrom, of course, is. But this one is by far my wackiest. So I would love to know, is Columbus giving too much? Is Calgary giving too much? Is this a fair trade? I would love to know your thoughts down below. Again, this does depend on what Calgary actually wants, what they want to do with these players, that they want to go in a more contending direction. Patrik Laine could be a fascinating player to bring on and could be really interesting. I mean, you could have a Laine and Huberdeau top two left wing core, which although is the definition of inconsistency, when they are on their game, they could be pretty special. So we'll see. This could be a fun trade though, and I would love to see it happen, especially for Columbus getting a type of goaltender like Markstrom. That would be huge for them. But those are my Patrik Laine mock trades. I would love to know down below what you guys thought. Would you agree? Do you disagree with my mock trades? And what do you see a Patrik Laine trade looking like? Where do you see him being dealt? Would love to know your thoughts down below. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more hockey videos just like this every day throughout the offseason. Of course, share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online and click on this card for all the trade content through all your dreams. So much there that you guys can binge. And I hope you have a great hockey day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.